Welcome back to the channel, guys. We're here at Bass Lab Studios. Today I am touching base with very special guests. We've got Manny on the show. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for inviting me.
All the way down to Watford. Where are you coming from today?
I'm coming from London. So yeah, it's a journey.
Different scenes today.
Yeah, different scenes. It's nice. Always good to do something different.
But appreciate you coming to support my hometown and the hometown of Bass Lab. So I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So let's just get straight into it. Where you from? Name, age, and what is your business? What is it about?
Yeah, so my name is Manny. Age 36. I hope that's not too old. Where I'm from Highbury, North London. And my business, you mentioned? Yeah, so the business is called Outchea. And yeah, those are the highlighted points.
So let's just dive right into the building of Outchea, okay? Where did the idea form? How did it start? Who kind of was the initial team?
Yeah, I mean, it started because we grew up from a musical background, where in our neighborhood everybody kind of made music. So for many years, we've been going back and forth on the idea, like, okay, how are we gonna create something of our own? So I look at a lot of music videos, watch documentaries. So I stumbled across the Rockefeller tour. I think it was Hard Knock Life tour, where you had Rockefeller, you had Def Jam, you had Rough Riders. I think there's one more. I think Murder Inc. was involved in that, if I'm not mistaken. So I looked and I'm like, wow, this is kind of dope. Like, I'd love to do something like this someday. Anyway, fast forward, I was on the phone to one of my friends, Gerd, and I said, oh, look, I think we should do this. And that was like last year, 2024. I think we should do it. Let's create our own, performance. The performance side of things is a bit, not on the up right now in London or in general. Let's do something. Let's build it. Let's gather a couple friends together. Let's really look at the location, look at the talent. You guys can be the the headline acts and etc. So that's basically how it began. Pretty much everybody that we began it with is still a part of it today. So we all know each other from 20 years ago. So it's just a nice thing for us to kind of just start something, begin it here, and then just kind of exponentially grow together. That's the main thing.
Incredible. So you mentioned your inspiration kind of from the US, and you said that you grew up around people who were around music. Yeah. What kind of capacity? Did you do music yourself? What were you kind of exposed to growing up?
Yeah, so I did do music when I was younger, older now. So I started hip hop, rap. It's been my thing. Grime early. I mean, it wasn't grime then. We used to call it MCing. Back in the 2000s. But yeah, kind of that's where it stems from when it comes from my musical journey. Of course, church, parents being involved in the choir and stuff, and that kind of also was an influence to what I do musically. And then just that's been basically my journey.
And in terms of the artists and genres that you work with now, what does that include?
So we primarily work with R&B and hip hop artists, but we are going into different spaces, i.e. alternative music. We've considered classical music, pop music for sure. You mentioned you was talking about rock, and I was thinking, yeah, that would be a cool idea, to go into the rock space. But I think because we are still very new, very infant stages, I felt it would be good to just kind of slowly progress. I mean, we say slowly, but I mean, we're on our 5th show now, or 4th show, but we are planning another 3 shows this year. So, and it's in different parts of the world. So those are going to really attract, different types of people and allow us to expand more and more.
So in terms of your first ever event, what would you say the biggest challenges or the things that you were kind of learning as you were building that first one?
It's very important to have a team, because putting on an event like this is basically putting on a concert. And it's far from, it's just impossible basically to just do it on your own. So I would always say, have a team of people who you're able to work with, and ensure that everybody has their tasks and roles in order for it to be a success. You are obviously going to come across a number of hurdles whilst working and doing the show, I think the first point is make sure you have a team.
So I guess
100%.
it's like the attention to detail, it's the
Attention to
safety,
detail, yeah.
it's just, you know, everything comes
Always,
together.
because you're not always going to remember everything.
Yeah.
And if somebody else has got to focus on a certain area,
Mm-hmm.
they're more than likely to remember it more than you would. So
Yeah, that makes sense. So in terms of like the core team members, like for people that are like either interested in working in events or trying to build their event brands themselves as well, what would you say like the core initial roles that are needed when you're starting a company like this?
well, I would say events. I mean, you kind of, if the team is small, pretty much everybody does everything.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
you're going to need an events manager for sure, or someone that's handling the events. So we have a hospitality individual who looks after hospitality for the guests who are performing, and maybe some VIPs. We also need people to look after the general public as well. The guests that are walking in as general guests to see people performing. I'm just trying to think of the roles. I mean, it's kind of difficult.
As you said, it's a startup. Everyone's working for everything. It's very hands-on, I can imagine.
Very. So I mean, until it kind of becomes a thing where you're you're catering to about 1,000, 2,000 people, it's always going to be a bit of everything. Okay, you need somebody in the marketing department, but me and 3 other guys are probably talking about marketing strategy. So it's not left to one person, and we're all still got like core areas of the company that we have to kind of manage. So yeah.
Okay, so for example, if you were looking for someone to join your team today, and they were just looking for experience, they were like, okay, I just want to get stuck in, I want to learn about the industry, I want to be part of the team and learn about what you do. What would you say would be like the core characteristics, skills, or like qualities that person should have to be able to work with you?
Okay, so if anybody knows anything about me, it's always about how dedicated you are and how much effort you can put into something, right? So if I'm looking to work with somebody, I need somebody who's never going to give me excuses. I need somebody who is always proactive. I need someone who will always bring something new to the table, or even if it's not new, just like, this is the task, bam, 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 I've knocked it out. What's there to do next? Because with me, that shows that you have an ability to go far and beyond the norm. So that's how I mean, I guess that's where I've come from. That's kind of work ethic that I've kind of put into everything that I do. So that's what I like to see in other people. So that's for me. I mean, everybody will have different ways and different opinions on how and what people should do when they come in. But for me, I'm just looking for somebody who's willing to learn. Like you need to make me feel like I'm not doing my job. That's who I'm looking for to work with. So yeah.
Okay, cool. So this is a question I usually ask most of my guests, like what their perspective is on university and like gaining the knowledge for careers. Did you go to university yourself?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, what did you study?
I studied electronic engineering.
Okay, nice. So very different from what you're doing now, but maybe like some transferable skills there.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
So for someone like joining your team or your current team, what's your kind of like view on, do people need qualifications? Is it something you can learn on the job? Like, how would you advise people to go about like learning to be the best kind of like, whether it be a marketing person, logistical, like the best team member possible?
All right. So I studied engineering in university, graduated, but I haven't used that degree at all. What I do today, I've never studied it in any educational institute. But I always say in universities, that is the best place to network. So study, get your grades, but also network with the people you're studying with, because you just never know what direction people are going to go in. So that is important. So coming back to what you mentioned, working with somebody like myself, if you haven't been to university, that's fine. As long as you can tell me and show me that you have a particular skill set for what I'm looking for, and you can deliver, because a lot of people can't deliver stuff. If you can deliver what you say you can deliver, let's work, let's get it cracking. But if you're, I mean, I don't know if I'm the place to say it, but if you're a waffler, you just talk and nothing comes from it, but you're just great at talking, I'll have to just find something else for you to do, because you won't be able to help in the space that I need you to be in currently, or which you've applied for or requested to work in. So it's more about, are you able to do what you say you can do within the spaces that we request you to to work in.
So kind of as expected, it is quite like a cutthroat industry in a sense of like, you know, it sounds like it really requires someone super hardworking,
definitely.
super like, you know, on the ball all the time. In terms of like the way you work, the working hours, like what does a kind of like day-to-day look like for you and working on the events?
Yeah, so working on Outchea in particular, it does sometimes cut into other things that I do, but it's a constant work in progress, we should say. And the reason why that is because one, we work on multiple countries. Two, we're working on with multiple artists. Three, we're researching constantly on how to make the shows in different locations better than the last, taking inspiration from what is currently outside, and kind of trying to implement it in what we're doing. And that goes from the live space to the digital space. So if I've seen something somewhere or I've gone to an event, it's going to be a memory. You know, my colleague as well, he'll probably call me up and say, oh, look, there's somebody that I've seen. I think, you know, we should, you know, get them on board or have a conversation with them at least. So to answer your question, a typical day to day for me is pretty much every day, Monday to Sunday, maybe minimum 5 hours, 3 to 5 hours per day on Outchea.
Yeah.
So,
but it seems like your mind is always switched on about your business because obviously, as you said, it's a lot of the digital space and kind of constantly learning and learning those cultural elements as well for the international expansion. So when you started your business, did you was the plan to be international?
Yeah, straight away.
Yeah.
I mean, the first show we kind of zoned in and said London, but then I looked at labels. I looked at what they were doing in terms of moving to places like Africa. And I was like, all right, cool. I'm Nigerian. I'm going to Nigeria. I might as well do an Outchea in Nigeria as well, you know, in Lagos. So that was, I mean, it was shortly after we finished the first one, or maybe just before we actually did it. We said, oh, yeah, we're doing international variants of Outchea. And that is where we then kind of progress. And now we're talking New York, we're talking Ghana, we're talking Sweden, we're talking Toronto. So it's going to be a gradual process. I'm not saying, I mean, I'm not a wealthy individual. We're still, you know, trying out here. So, you know, it's more about, you know, how can we get on local partners to help us develop a great concept, because it is a good concept for emerging and upcoming artists. So, yeah.
Sounds great. So when you, as you said, did you do your event in Lagos?
Yeah,
yeah,
we did.
What were like the biggest challenges or things that you didn't expect that you had to consider from starting an event in London and then doing one abroad? Like, what was the kind of major differences?
I think because I don't live in Lagos, it's always difficult to kind of arrange things prior to getting there. So I think communication and communicating with the right people or person in order to make the event a success was probably one of the hardest challenges. And thereafter, it's more about, okay, we've got this individual or individuals. Who can we get involved in terms of artists to be a part of this experience? Who can come in on okay, I'd love the exposure. I'd love to perform to because we had 200 people turn up. I'd love to perform to a number of people. I want to get myself out there. We also had to get in people who were maybe on the brink of, I wouldn't call them emerging, but they are emerging somehow, but on the upscaling, emerging breakthrough. Yeah. So in Nigeria, there was an artist called Rebecca, who we got Taves, we got a duo, twin brothers called Boy Breed, and there's somebody else, Mins. So these guys are quite known in Lagos. Maybe not so much over here.
I think of course, like Rebecca, she had a super big tune, like she was signed to a major.
Yeah,
so
yeah. It was the freestyle she did that went super viral. And it was actually a self moment for me, where I got to work with her because I'd seen that viral clip back, I believe it was lockdown. And I was like, oh wow, she's got a sick voice, and there was no recording.
It's like voice, yeah.
So yeah, to work with her in that, it was like, okay, this is a moment for me, you know. So yeah.
Amazing. So in terms of artists, what do you look for, and who are like the artists you've worked with so far? Like, who has really impressed you working with them, and why? In terms of like the live performance side of it.
No, I like that question. All right. So a couple names do spring to mind, particularly in Nigeria, because, you know, that's a place where I wouldn't say people don't look, but it's not like it's not option number one for a lot of labels. I mean, I could be wrong, but from what I see on the outside looking in, it isn't. But I would say, so I work with a young artist called Explode. He's got a very local, authentic sound. And I look forward to seeing what he does in the future. And he's an Afro beats artist.
Mm-hmm.
But he has this, so in local land in Lagos, there's a sound called Fuji,
Mm-hmm.
and he has that in his tone when he sings. When you hear him, it's like, wow, this is crazy. And if you resonate with that, you'll feel it. There was another guy called Tokyo. He's also another Nigerian artist, but he's more R&B. But he did an Afro R&B fusion when he worked with B, because in Lagos we focus on the strongest genre of music, which is Afro beats and its fusion variants. So those are the two artists that stood out the most to me. I'm sure there's more, but yeah, those are very, very good ones. And in London, there was what's her name? Lexi she's strong, very strong artist. She's actually from Chicago, but she now lives in London, and she performed. She was outstanding. She performed at our last Outchea. That was phenomenal. And then there's a gentleman by the name of Fran. He's also quite cool. So these are four artists that I think, I mean, I don't know if you wanted one or two or three.
Yeah, I feel that.
But yeah, those are four artists for me so far. It stood out. Outside of what I know, imagine not working with somebody and hearing their sound for the first time live. And even in rehearsals, you're like, wow. And these people that I talk about, they're very they dedicate themselves to music. They dedicate themselves to their craft. And that for me is part of being a standout artist. It's not just about being a good artist and 1,000 people turning up. What is your attitude towards the people you're working with? How is that? And these guys were very, very wholesome. They were very, on point. So that's what I appreciate, and it's just good to kind of shine a light on them.
I think that's really important to say, how like the attitude and the vibe of artists in the kind of in-person experience is still so important, because I think a lot of artists are starting their careers, say for example on TikTok or online, and they kind of like haven't developed that side of themselves and for their career. So I think it's really good for new and upcoming artists to know how important it is to really get themselves out there, make themselves personable, and to get these opportunities. So how would you say your team is like actively finding the talent? What are the kind of ways where, for example, artists can kind of think, okay, well, maybe these are the places I should position myself to actually get a bit more exposed to companies like yours? Or on the other hand, like other event brands, like, where should they kind of like be looking to find good talent?
Yeah, so we use one of our, I guess, strongest points is the use of social media. We look at, who's online and who's been putting in work, or even, just generally, like, we just look for good music. We also, I personally, I'm sure my colleague does the same as well. We, for example, put on like Spotify, and then there's like different, you can look for an artist, and then obviously there's the radio. So we let that run. And this is something I've been doing for years. I did it with SoundCloud. I let it run and then just listen to who's up next. And then it's like, if it's a sound that kind of resonates with me, I'm like, who's that?
So it's really like sonically first. It's not even like you're looking at
No. I don't look
like,
no.
How many followers have they got,
No.
or what is their content?
No. I've had artists on the platform with less than 1,000 followers. So it doesn't matter. For me, it's not about following. It's about how good you are as an artist, and if you are prepared to perform to an audience, a real audience. So that's, for me, how we look for artists. Is just, for me anyway, I listen to a radio using Spotify, maybe Apple, but more Spotify. And I hope they do work with us in the future. So we listen, and then we play, sometimes YouTube as well, actually. Just let it run, and then whoever pops up who's good. And then I use Instagram. Maybe somebody is, tag somebody in something, and I have a listen. I'm like, okay, that's a good sound. That person sounds good. I mean, it's not about following at this point. It's more about, okay, how well does this person sing? Pre-recorded and recorded. I mean, how does it? What's the selection of beat? Is this a good performance track? Because that's also, you could be a good singer, but you might not have a great performance track, and that's no disrespect. Exactly. So I think it's our job as a company to highlight those points and say, okay, yes, you sound great, but I haven't heard a great performance track. And I'm not saying that performance track should have 10 million streams. Just want to hear something that you can perform. So phase 1, phase 2.
So have you given opportunities for artists to perform for the first time at any of your shows?
Yeah. I think a lot of the artists have actually performed for the first time at a show. Yeah, there's a lot of artists. I mean, especially Nigeria. I know a lot of those don't have the opportunity to perform to an audience. So somebody putting something together for an audience to attend and admire their music and their performance, I'm sure. Yeah.
Wow. And I think like I really respect that, because I think like it's a huge risk for like, you know, an events platform, and
expensive,
you know, yeah, exactly. And there's so many things that go into running successful events. So yeah, I'd say like what my question is like, what motivates you and kind of like what keeps you going in such a kind of fast-paced, stressful business?
I guess I've got a genuine passion for great sound. And I mean, we can take this back to engineering. You know, in engineering, we deal with frequencies all the time, you know. And then if you go further back, science, every object has its own frequency. So not to go too deep into it, but I think for me, it's what resonates with you. So for example, you've heard people singing and the glass breaks, right? So when that happens, because the frequency of what the person is singing vocally matches the frequency of the object, and that's why the glass breaks. For me, when someone is singing on whoever they're singing live on the radio, whatever, it resonates with me. So for me, it's like, oh wow, this is like, I want to work with you. I want you to perform. So that's kind of how we connect. That's how I connect.
So it feels like you're really at the forefront of your business because your ear is so important. And it's like, how do you actually teach someone else to kind of like build that taste and that quality?
It's difficult. I don't think you can teach that. I think it's more of, if it's within you, it's within you, right? And then you just kind of amplify that in whatever space you're in. So when it comes to music, like you ask, what motivates me? I think because I'm passionate about music, I've always loved music. Like hip hop has been my thing from the jump. R&B has been, you know, things, you know, sometimes you can listen to a record and it just makes you feel a certain way, you know, sometimes cry sometimes, you know, it's like
nostalgia.
That hit me, you know, it's like, wow, goosebumps, all the rest of it. So I think I get motivated to do and want to be in spaces where I discover somebody who will probably go off to do amazing things. It's like, oh shit, my ear was right. You know, I knew that track was going to do well. I knew that artist was going to do well. So that probably is what fuels my energy to keep pushing forward.
I think that's a really good point of like, it can't be forced. Like, I think so many young people see the music industry, they see live events, they think, no, it'd be so glamorous, it'll be so much fun to like work in a space like that. But I think for me personally, from what I've seen and working with so much like young talent and people coming to work in the music industry, is that you have to first and foremost have a passion for music, like not the kind of rewards that come with it. So yeah, I think you would just really kind of like emphasize that point there.
There is a second element to music as well, and it's more to do with data. So a lot, I've come across a lot of people who aren't, you know, they're not gifted in the space of knowing music, but it's their focus is more around the data.
An audience, I guess, like.
Well, yeah, audience. So basically they can, it's crazy. I don't know how they do this, but they can basically figure out how well a record is doing based on its audience in a particular country, particular city, whatever, and then just develop that piece of information and magnify it in different places. So people, I mean, I personally don't, that's not my thing. I mean, we use data to kind of navigate where we can go next, but in terms of like using data
to forecast where
that's a whole other thing.
But yeah, I'd say from my personal experience that today marketing jobs in music are very like data driven, like data focused. Like even if you come into a role and you think it's marketing, you think it's gonna be, oh, it's creative, it's gonna be like social media. A lot of it is looking at the data and looking, as you said, where are people streaming song in Germany, and then kind of like building things for the artist, building events in that space to then kind of like capitalize on that. It is, you know, data is a great part of it.
Not my part though, but
this is my point is that like I think, you know, I was someone who is not like a data person. I was never a numbers person. But I think for young people today, it is kind of like important to consider that as like picking it up as a skill, because it just makes you more valuable, puts you
Exactly.
so yeah, I think people who work in music these days, like as you mentioned in your company, like there's a lot of different hats, a lot of different skill sets that you need.
Yeah.
And in terms of, so we talked about like the artists, so it seems like you work with like a variety of artists, as you said, from different experience levels. Where do you see Outchea in like 5 years? What's the vision? What's the ambition for the company?
I mean, we want to be in multiple countries. I mean, there's, if I'm not mistaken, 100 plus different countries in the world, right? So we want to be in at least, I don't know what percentage. Yeah, that's a bit wild. I can't really think right now. But
what are the targets? Like, where would be somewhere where you would almost think that could be the biggest challenge that you'd want to get to?
America is a good space for us. That's why we're attempting to do something in New York. We have multiple cities in America that we're looking at. We're looking at Chicago.
Yeah.
We're looking at Miami. It's going to be a little bit tricky. What else are we looking at? But anyway, America is one for us. So 5 years. You know what? I missed the point. We wanted to begin Outchea and make it a European-based company. That was the first point. I just remembered now. And we wanted to be all over Europe and have a stronghold in Europe and compare it to America and say, okay, cool, we've got Europe. We can beat America. But then that kind of changed. So I would say in 5 years, that European dream hopefully will come to pass.
What were the reasons it changed? Like, what would you say is going on in the scene in Europe?
I think I came to terms with it was more financially driven. It was more along the lines of there's a bigger pot in America and there's a lot more support in America and there's a lot more talent in America. So I was looking at the numbers and I was like, oh, well, we don't want to miss out on that. And then how it looks optics wise, it's like, oh, you guys have been to New York. You guys have done something in London. You guys have been to Africa as well. It's like, oh, wow, that's
more reputable.
So that was kind of like the direction that we was trying to go in. Well, we began the European talk and then we kind of transitioned because there was a bit more we could do and we travel a lot as well. So it's like, all right, we might as well, if we're in New York, let's do an outro in New York, you know. If we're not going to Spain for the next 6 months, I mean, we can plan, but if we're in New York instead of Spain, then let's do something in New York. So those are the reasons why we changed that whole.
And building an international company in 2025, what would you say in terms of like language barriers? Like, would you feel like your team needs to be like multilingual, or is that not really needed?
That's a good point. We haven't come across, we haven't thought about that yet, but that is important because, like, for example, if we were to do something in Spain, Paris, France, French is the more spoken language out there. We'd need somebody on ground to speak French to help us translate what we need done out there well enough. Not everybody's going to be fluent in English. So yes, it will have to be at a particular stage, be a multilingual company. So yeah.
So yeah, it still needed to stay because I think some people like for me, for example, when I went to uni, I studied Spanish and Portuguese. So my thing was like, I knew that like when you travel, you need like languages are still important. Whereas I think some people think, oh, you can just use Google Translate now, or like everyone speaks English and it's not really needed. So it's just good to know that like, you know, it's still kind of like needed.
I'll sorry to cut you there. I'm trying to learn Mandarin as well. I mean, I'm not, but wow. Definitely. K-pop is big. I mean, I know K-pop is not in like China, but it's in Korea, but it's Southeast Asia. So it's a language. But yeah, I mean, if we're trying to go to those kind of spaces, not everybody, English isn't their first language. So we definitely need to learn languages or have someone on the team who is well versed, who can speak the language, who can translate it very well as well. Because if we could say something and think it's cool, but when you translate it, it's all mad. So definitely need to have somebody on board for that.
So one of my last few questions to you is, so you've just told me about the whole vision of the company. Who would be like a major brand partnership or artist collaboration, like someone you would love to work with in the future?
I've had this thought as well. It wouldn't be more okay. So quickly, I study people. So Dave Grutman from Live, and he's got a whole Grutman hospitality. He did something quite interesting. He created Live, and then obviously built it, and then did a partnership with Live Nation. Now that for me was like one of the most, because I didn't know that till very recently. That for me was like genius. And I was like, oh shit, is that what you did?
Yeah, it's like a gap in the
I'm
market,
like, what, how are you always getting Lil Wayne, Future, Rick? I mean, I'm in the club as well, and I'm seeing them behind me. I'm like, yo, you know, people pay to see these guys. They're just here in the club. So I'm like, how did that work? And I've always wondered that for many years. And then he said it in an interview. I was like, oh, that makes sense. You did a partnership with Live Nation. You don't have to worry about artists turning up. You know that an artist is always going to turn up. You know, people are going to spend hella money in your club on a Sunday, and that's it. Done. So he's created a whole, yes, it's a crazy thing, but yeah, shout out to Dave Grutman.
Love that. So in terms of like advice that you would give to your younger self if you had to start this journey again, what would you do differently?
My younger self, I wasn't thinking like this when I was younger, if I'm totally honest with you. But I guess I would have had a lot more opportunities if I was a lot more, I wouldn't say patient, but a lot more understanding of people's position and people, because I'm the kind of go-getter guy, right? So if I'm with you and we've spoken about a business idea, I'm assuming that you're going to be as on it as I am. But I've only just really recently understood that not everybody has that in them. Yes, they will talk it. They will say, yeah, let's do it. Let's work it. Let's do it. But then when it comes to it actually happening, it doesn't really translate. So, and then that kind of irritates me a lot. And then kind of like, you know, friendships can kind of go down the pan. But if I was younger, I would tell myself, learn, understand people more. So
I think that's great advice, and I think that goes for like people working directly with artists as well. I think like personally you can never have more ambition than the artist. Like say you're a manager or say you're doing events for an artist, even though you might think they're so talented and you love like what they're doing,
correct,
the artist always needs to be like the most ambitious like for themselves and their career. I think.
You can't force people to do things. You can encourage them, you could always give some kind of advice, but you can't force people. If they're not going to do it, they're not going to do it. So that's it.
Very, very wise words. Thank you so much, Manny.
Thank you for having me.
I would love to hear about when your next event is. Where's it going to be?
The next event is going to be in London. We have a series of events happening this year, but the next one is going to be in London, August 21st at Colours Hoxton. So yeah, that's going to be Outchea. The handle or the Instagram handle is Outchea Live. The website is outchea.co.uk, if you can see. So yeah, OUTCHEA.
But yeah, thank you so much for coming on. I wish you all the best. I think you've dropped so many like gems for my audience. I'm sure, you know, you're probably going to get a lot of people hitting you up.
Let's hope so.
100%. Like for more wise words and also just to kind of like support what you're doing. So I think you've got an incredible vision.
Appreciate that.
So yeah, that's it for the day, guys. So thank you so much, and I will see you back on the channel soon, guys.